Oh, boo! It's Puremix.
Puremix, y'all come on in.
Guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, my dear friend Willie Mitchell, who is the owner of Royal Studios and an amazing producer, engineer, mixer in his own right. And I want to pass it over to Boo now.
Thank you, Matt. Well, welcome, Puremix. We are in the Royal Studios here in Memphis, Tennessee. Royal is the third oldest continually operated studio in America and the fourth oldest in the world. It's been here since 1957. It was the second commercial studio in Memphis, and how Royal got started is when the famous $1 Million Quartet photo happened, where the night that Elvis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, and Jerry Lee Lewis were all at Sun Studios. And when they took that photo that night, Elvis and Johnny Cash told Sam Phillips that they were, leaving Sun and going elsewhere to record and be artists. So when that happened, Elvis's bass player, Bill Black, thought he might do his own thing. There was a producer working under Sam, Quentin Clonch, who would eventually own Gold Wax Records. He wanted to do his own thing too, and an engineer, Ray Harris, they all decided that they wanted to start their own studio. So they got local record shop owner Joe Coogie, who owned Pop Tunes Record Store and all the jukeboxes in Memphis. They got him to buy the Royal Theater in '57, and it started Royal Studios / High Records. The parallel story is the story of Willie Mitchell, my father, who was the inventor of the Memphis Soul Sound. Pop got out of the Army in the Korean War in 1952, came back home, and he wanted a new sound. And he was everybody knows Al Jackson Jr., the drummer for Booker T and MGs, but his father, Al Jackson Sr., in the 40s had a big band, and Willie Mitchell was in that band. And Al Jr. would be tagging along, and Pop would always say, "Man, let little Al play," and Sr. never would let him, but one night he got to play, and that had an effect on Pop. So when Pop got home from the war, he went and got Al Jackson Jr. to be his drummer, and my Uncle James on saxophone. So that sound, Pop had the most famous band in Memphis by 1954, and every Memphis musician sat in with him. Isaac Hayes, David Porter, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas. It was kind of like a rite of passage to be in the Willie Mitchell band. So Pop wanted a new sound, and he started the Memphis Soul Sound, which was a few and fat horns and a small rhythm section. And he cut his first record here in '58. And Pop never liked the way his record sounded, and he wanted to engineer, but Ray Harris told him that black people couldn't touch the equipment. So Pop put up with that for a couple of years, has a meeting with Joe Coogie, and Joe's like, "Sure, Willie, you can engineer." So once Pop started engineering, the sound changed, and he started selling more records. So here's Willie Mitchell's first song recorded here that he didn't engineer. So that song was called The Crawl, and then the first song that Willie Mitchell engineered was So that song is called 2075. So Pop's sound basically changed everything. It even changed the trajectory of Stax and Satellite because Jim Stewart was a fiddle player, and he was one of the owners of Stax, and his sister had Estelle Axton had a son, Packy Axton, who had a bluegrass band, and they would sneak in underage to clubs where Willie Mitchell was playing, and they came and told their parents, they said, we don't want to play these fiddles anymore. We want to play horns like the Willie Mitchell band. And that bluegrass band became the Marquis. And their first song was Last Night, which sounds a lot like the first Willie Mitchell song that I played. So once Pop started engineering, he started altering the room. You can hear the evolution of the sound of this place. Here's a record that was made a few years later. So that record is called 30-60-90, and that's about 1967. 1968, Pop discovered Al Green and brought him to Memphis and started working on music with him. And they cut one record, Al Green's Blues was the first record they recorded. Didn't really sell anything. So they tried again. 1970 rolls around, and a lot of pivotal things happened. Pop had enough money to buy out the engineer, Ray Harris, that told him that he couldn't touch the equipment. Pop told, Ray was gathering his things to leave, and Pop goes, I learned a lot from you, Ray. And Ray was like, what's that, Hoss? And Pop goes, never cut a record like you cut it. So Pop became an equal owner of High Records and Royal Studios, and then Joe Coogee passed away in 1970 as well. And in his will, he instructed the other owners that he wanted Willie Mitchell to have complete artistic control and to be the vice president of the company. So that's when Pop kind of perfected the room. He had a engineer wizard. It was like James Bond's Q, named Bill Cantrell, that was one of the owners. And Bill probably built most of the recording studios in Memphis in the 60s. But Pop would tell him what he wanted, and Bill would make it happen. So this is when the room got all decked in fiberglass insulation and burlap. And my aunt tells the story of Pop, for about 6 months, he would walk around hitting the snare drum. It's like, it ain't right, it ain't right. And finally he got it right. And the first song recorded with the perfected Willie Mitchell configuration was this one. That's the perfected room configuration. And then the next year in 71, he would make one more sonic leap in his engineering, like microphone selection. And this is the year that he discovered Al Green sounded better on mic number 9, which I'll show you in a minute. This is the Everything Perfected song. right. That was Let's Stay Together. Recorded in 71, went #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts in 72. And yeah, I think it dethroned American Pie, was the longest #1 record at the time. This is the famous microphone #9. It's a RCA 77DX, and it does sound better than the other ones. I don't know. These things were all handmade around 1950, and whoever made this must have had a good night the night before, because it clearly sounds better than the rest of them. But every Al Green hit was sang on this, from Let's Stay Together, Love and Happiness, Still in Love with You, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, For the Good Times, all of them. So Royal was an old movie theater, and this building was actually built in 1915, and it started as the Shamrock Theater, and I think in 1939, another company bought it and turned it into the Royal Theater. So that moniker outside, it's from 39. And the floor slopes in here, if you can tell, it's shorter up here and bigger down there. And I think that's why Pop wanted put the drums up here, so they would have a more compressed sound. But Pop always thought that the sloping floor gave Royal the sound a mystical quality. In 61, when Stax bought their building around the corner, they bought an old theater too, because their first record was recorded in Royal, and they liked the way it sounded. So there's a little theater lore, Memphis music. These baffles have always been here, and Pop used these. So historically, back in the day, Al Green would do his vocals right here in between these two guys. And we still use these. Hello. Matt, didn't I use these on like Dolomite soundtrack or something?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So these things still...
It's so genius how they can twist either way.
So I used them on soundtrack. I used them on Cedric Burnside's I Be Trying record. I mean, you can hear it on the drums too, probably. Hear the difference? So this kit is a Rogers from 75. The studio kit was always a Rogers kit. Those cymbals, those are the 16-inch hi-hats that you can clearly hear on Love and Happiness. I Can't Stand the Rain. There's a few songs that's with that really driving cymbal sound, and I think they may actually be two crashes in reality. They may not be hi-hats at all, but the drums have always been here, and this drum shack is one of the things that makes the Royal drum sound real distinct and unique. One of the special things about the records that were made here was the band, the high rhythm section. Pop kept losing his rhythm section. So his first rhythm section was Louis Steinberg on bass, Al Jackson Jr., and a bunch of those guys ended up being the rhythm section at Stax when they opened in 61. So Pop got Leroy Hodges on bass in 61 and Reggie Young on guitar. Reggie Young would end up going to American Studios, playing on all of those like Sweet Caroline and Son of a Preacher Man, and eventually moved on to Nashville and played on everything up there in the 70s. So around 67 is when he assembled the complete high rhythm section, and that was Howard Grimes on drums, Leroy Hodges on bass, Charles Hodges on organ, Archie Turner, my uncle hubby, on Wurlitzer, and Teeny Hodges on guitar. So this B3 has been here since 1967, and this is the same one that you hear on records. Love and Happiness, Let's Stay Together, Still in Love with You, all of those records. Ann Peoples, O.V. Wright, Seal Johnson, Otis Clay, a lot of incredible artists, but this has been here since then. This was Teeny Hodges' guitar spot. He played through that Princeton. Leroy Hodges played bass right here, and the drums have been there where Howard Grimes and Al Jackson Jr. played. And then over here was always keyboard land, where my uncle hubby played Wurlitzer. So that was a bit of Ann Peoples' I Can't Stand the Rain. Was recorded, I think, around 74. And this thing is another cool thing that was on that record.
I can't stand the rain against my window, bringing back sweet memories. Yeah, when the rain, do you remember?
That was the I Can't Stand the Rain sound, like the first drum device from 72 or something. Microsonic, how is it?
I think so, yeah.
It's a Microsonic something.
Don't tell them.
Electronic congos.
Don't tell them. Bleep that name out. I want to find me one first before we put that name in there.
So this is a famous Coca-Cola crate. I'll show you why it's famous.
Yeah, something that can make you do wrong, make you do right. Yeah, love.
So that sound. So that's that's what the count off on Love and Happiness is. The story with the crate is my Uncle James was the baritone in the Memphis Horns, and he was the shortest guy in the horn section. And Pop would always make him stand on this Coke crate to get his horn up to the mic. And when Love and Happiness was recorded, because Teeny Hodges wrote the chords, Al wrote the lyrics, Pop was like, let Teeny count this one off. And all the guys were like, how are we going to hear Teeny? And Pop said, let him stomp on James' Coca-Cola crate. And it started off as a joke, but Pop kept it for the record. Crazy. All right, come on, the rabbit hole goes deeper.
What shoes was he wearing, though? That's what I want to know.
So these are some of the master tapes, some of the later ones from the mid-70s on, and some of the gold records. Pop and Al, they cut 6 consecutive #1 albums in a row and 11 consecutive #1 singles in a row. And to this day, Al Green is the only artist from Memphis to have 6 consecutive #1 albums. This thing right here, this is one of the secret herbs and spices. So this is Willie Mitchell's custom-made Ampex 8-track. It's a bunch of 351s. When 8-tracks came out, they were all solid state, and Pop didn't like the way they sound. So some guy in Texas made him an all-tube 8-track tape machine. And this is one of the reasons why those records sounded different. Al Green was one of the first African-American artists to sell millions of albums. He was also one of the first to sell out arenas. Most kind of well-known soul and R&B acts would play theaters like the Greek Theater or the Ryman, but Al was playing arenas. Like, he would play wherever the Stones played, that's where he played. And his records still sell. I think Greatest Hits and Let's Stay Together still sell platinum like every 3 to 5 years. So this is the site of the original control room from 57 till about 74. And in 74, they, with those machines in here, and it wasn't all cosmetic like it is now. In 74, they built a state-of-the-art quadraphonic studio upstairs with a 16-track tape machine and a 24-track board. And the records were recorded up there until about 87. And famous records made up there were like Al Green's Full of Fire, some O.V. Wright records, Rod Stewart's first solo record, Atlantic Crossing, Keith Richards' first solo record, Talk Is Cheap, Keith Richards was the last artist to record up there. And then in early 88, Pop decided to come back to this room, and he renovated it and bought this console from Randy Blevins in Nashville. And Pop wanted another MCI board. This is a MCI 536. And Randy was like, man, I got a board that just came out of the Bahamas. Some Stones records were made on it. And Pop was like, well, I just cut Keith Richards, so I'll take it. So we get the board in, and then we started to find out the history of the board. So this board came from Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas, and not only were the Stones recorded on it, but AC/DC's Back in Black was recorded on this desk. Some Peter Tosh, Iggy Pop, and just loads of people that Chris Blackwell was recording in Compass Point up until, I think this board was there up until about 84, maybe. This has been at Royal since 88, and we've recorded loads of people on it. Wu-Tang Clan has recorded on it. We did Mark Ronson's Uptown Special, which included Uptown Funk recorded on it. And that was one of the, when I met Mark Ronson, when I remember he walked in the room and saw this, and he goes, man, I have that same desk because I read somewhere your dad had one. So he bought the same board. And I think since we recorded Uptown Funk, Bruno has bought the same console too. I started my career in, I guess officially, I was always hanging out here, but probably more officially when I was about 15 or 16. Pop had bought us an old Lindrum, like a Poly 800, and we had a 4-track Tascam cassette recorder. And we would, you program your drums and then you have to play your bass lines and stuff. And then by 88, we recorded our first record, and it was the same thing. we didn't have sequencers and stuff, so you dump your drums to tape, and then you go back and play your bass lines and go back and play all your other stuff. And eventually I started working with my dad when I got older and just quizzing him on questions, with questions about how he did things. And I remember the first time I recorded a string section for Pop, he was like, I had plugged up a bunch of headphones and stuff, and he was like, "Oh, they don't need headphones, man. We play it out of the speaker." And I'm like, "Out of the speaker, Pop?" So apparently back in the day on all those high records, Al Green and stuff, there was like no cue system. There was a small speaker out there and play the music through the speaker, and the guys would play along with it. Eventually, they got a cue system, I guess, in the 70s or whatever, early 70s probably. For years, we just, you had a stereo mix, and whatever we heard in here was what you heard out there. We finally got, I don't know, probably, what year did we get whatever year Hearback was invented, we gave the luxury of having a multi-channel cue system, which has been a blessing and a curse because musicians aren't engineers, and a lot of times you have to go out there and dial it in for them. We still kept all of the microphones that Pop used, the outboard gear, like this LA-2A, and you can see it says Teletronics, so this is original from the 60s. These are original Pultecs, even this 1176. This was Al Green's vocal chain, and ironically, I used it on the Bruno Mars vocal chain for Uptown Funk. That song was a SM57 through the MCI pre's through this, and the vocal was done right here with the music coming out of the speakers, with me standing over here, of course, trying to kill the feedback. But those things have been here. Technology has changed over the years, so everything was obviously very analog. We went from 4-track to 8-track to 16-track to 24-track, and eventually to Pro Tools. But I remember when we were doing Keith Richards' Talk is Cheap, the control room was upstairs, which I'll show you guys later, and this was still kind of like it was in the 50s and 60s, and so that was the first time we met Steve Jordan, and he wanted to see the old room, and the 8-track was in here, all the machines, but Pop had 4 big Altec voice of the theaters were going across here on the ledge, and Steve comes in and says, "Willie, why you got 4 speakers?" And Pop goes, "Shit, I had 4 tracks." So I guess Pop was doing immersive back then. But we finally started, I think we did our first Pro Tools session in 2006. Then it started to be more and more. Eventually, I think we bought a rig 2007. But we were still, most of the time, we were recording to tape, and the tape machine was triggering Pro Tools via SMPTE. I think it was on a Boz Skaggs session in 2012 when we were doing that, and the tape machine flipped out, so we ended up recording straight to Pro Tools, but everything was going through the 24-track machine first, and then the Pro Tools. It just wasn't hitting tape, and we record a lot like that now. Everything comes in through the desk tape machine, then the Pro Tools. We just got the 8-track fired back up, so we're starting to use that again, and that thing just sounds like a cheat code. As far as mic pre's, we always use the MCI desk pre's, but we had these Altex 1566s We've had them for a while, and normally bass DI goes through there. I did put, when I record synthesizers, I normally stick them through that. Again, on Uptown, the Juno is running through that. And we've recently got these Coil Audio CA70s, which are my favorite. They're tube technology, but built today, and I kind of use them on everything. The coils are on everything I record. The Pultec, 1176, LA2A, and I've got a past 7-year love affair with the LA3As. We got a bunch of them back in the day. Use them on William Bell's vocal, Joss Stone vocal. Okay, so you want to know what's up with all this tape on the wall. So back in the day, you would have a track sheet in your 24-track tape box, and the track sheet showed you, you know, what's on channel 1, what's on channel 2. And then you would go to the board and put your tape across and write out, you know, what was on channel 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we still, even though we record to Pro Tools, because we run everything through the desk, it's easy to have the board tape. And then we're working on so many projects at the same time. So normally when we start something, we'll put the tape on the wall, and then if the artist comes back in a month, we just, instead of making a new piece of tape, we just take it off the wall and put it down.
Tape's expensive.
Tape is expensive, and I started keeping like famous tape from sessions. This is Luther Dickinson, and this is the Mark Ronson. This is actually the Uptown Funk tape, because we had Mystical in the studio that night. Eric Benet, North Mississippi All-Stars, Tony Joe White. This is Melissa Etheridge, Robert Cray. This is Dave Stewart, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Ty Segall, Bar-Kays, Yebba, P.J. Morton, B.J. the Chicago Kid, Cedric Burnside, some Al Green. But yeah, that's what's up with the tape. So this was our first Q system, and it literally has the letter Q, number 2. So this is Q2 and that's Q1. And Bill Cantrell put these up here so you can hang your headphones up so your headphones won't be on the floor. My dad was always pet peeve, headphones on the floor. Yeah, and it's been here forever. It's balanced with the Rock of Ages down there. I'm gonna take you guys upstairs and show you the second control room that was built around '74. This was the second control room, put up here in '74. It's an MCI 400 board, and Pop had API faders put on it for some reason. He just didn't want anything factory. This board is not functioning yet, but it will be soon. And this place was wired for quadraphonic, so you can see the 4 big speaker, Altec voice of the theaters, of course. It's like 4 shotguns pointed at you. So the records made up here would have been like Al Green's Full of Fire, a bunch of O.V. Wright records, Rod Stewart's Atlantic Crossing was recorded up here. What else? Oh, Keith Richards' Talk is Cheap was recorded up here. I was listening to Carlos Santana. Okay. So I don't play guitar. So we got some cool artifacts over here. This is a picture when Pop had his instrumental band and the very first iteration of the high rhythm section. It's Howard Grimes, Leroy Hodges, Charles Hodges, Teeny Hodges, and my dad's brother, Uncle James. And this was taken at Lansky's on Beale Street The Lanskys were the ones that dressed Elvis, Isaac Hayes, Willie Mitchell, Al Green, Rufus Thomas. They dressed all the Memphis musicians. Here's another Al Green's greatest hits. This is just from a few years ago. That record goes either gold or platinum every 3 or 4 years. There's a few of these. This is for Let's Stay Together that went platinum again from a couple of years ago. That's me at the Lanskys. They made a Royal Studios jacket with music notes on it. I think they have 3 versions now, if anybody wants to rock that. This is a picture of Pop and Ike Turner. Ike and Tina Turner cut, I think about 17 records here in the 60s before they went to Phil Spector. This is something from the Grammy Museum. They had a Royal Studios exhibit, and this panel was talking about Bruno Mars and Uptown Funk. This photo was actually taken the morning that we finished recording Uptown Funk. It's about 7 in the morning. We had been here since 11 that previous morning. And Bruno's glowing. I look like I'm about to die. This is William Brown, who was in the Mad Lads, but engineered here for pop from about 85 to the year 2000. It's Al Green from the I Can't Stop album around 2002. These are some of Pop's early instrumentals. He's in his early 30s on that picture. Pop Al, Teenie Hodges, again from the I Can't Stop session. This is High Rhythm section with Robert Cray taken a few years ago. They had a Grammy-nominated album called Robert Cray and High Rhythm. And here's some of the old photos from the glory days. This is about 74. Howard, Teenie, Charles, Hubby, Leroy. And that's Al Jackson Jr. sitting. This is the current control room, but back in the day with the 8-track and stuff. Just more photos. You can see the first hip-hop room in Memphis. Still smells like hip-hop in there. Yeah, this is a room I actually started in with a 4-track cassette recorder. And that was, was it 80? It's either 85 or 86. It's been quite some time ago. Lastly, this is a room with some of the records that were made here. A bunch of the Al Green stuff, O.V. Wright, Keith Richards, Talk is Cheap, Rod Stewart's Atlantic Crossing, John Mayer's Continuum. I'm Gonna Find Another You was made here. It's the last song on that record. Kind of a chill room.
Well, fellas, you've seen it all. Thank you, Boo, for showing them.
My pleasure.
And
my pleasure. Seriously, y'all gotta go.
Come on, go. Be gone. Hippies.